All right, class. Now we are moving into the tubulo-glomerular control of the glomerular filtration rate. Meaning, we will look at how the different cells of the nephron tubule help to regulate glomerular filtration rate. Previously, we have only looked at the afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole, how they regulate the glomerular filtration rate, right? Now we will see how the nephron itself regulates glomerular filtration rate. Okay. So right here, we do see the nephron, right? We do see the different parts of the nephron. I'm not labeling it because we already studied this. So you see the Bowman's capsule, proximal convoluted tubule, nephron loop, and the distal convoluted tubule. I want you to pay attention to the distal convoluted tubule, where you see some purple elongated cells. Do you see this? Purple elongated cells. Now, these purple elongated cells of the specific to the distal convoluted tubule, these are called macula densa cells. Macula densa cells. All right. What else do we see? We do see the afferent arteriole coming in and leading to the glomerulus. From the glomerulus, we also see the efferent arteriole coming out and forming the second capillary bed that runs along the nephron loop, right? Now, I want you to pay attention to the wall of the afferent arteriole. And there I have drawn out some green cells, if you can notice. These green cells are called, juxtaglomerular cells. Why are these important? Why are we even talking about the macula densa cells and juxtaglomerular cells? Listen carefully. The macula densa cells, they work like magic. So what do they do actually? The macula densa cells, they can monitor the filtrate. So these macula densa cells, they monitor, actually I should use a different color. They monitor the filtrate. And in case there is low filtrate volume, of filtrate or low osmolarity of the filtrate. So, in case the macula densa, so the filtrate is passing like this, right? Like this. And in case the filtrate, there is low volume of filtrate or there is low osmolality of the filtrate, the macula densa cells senses that something is off, right? It can sense, so there is of course less blood. So of course the blood pressure is low. That's why we have low filtrate volume. And then these macula densa cells coordinates to the juxtaglomerular cells. And it tells the juxtaglomerular cells, hey dude, you need to do something. I feel that the blood pressure is low and there is also low blood osmolality. So dude, you need to do something. Now, in turn, and we have studied this in the cardiovascular system as well. So now, in response to these macula densa cells, the juxtaglomerular cells will release a hormone called renin into the bloodstream. And remember, the stimulus here is decrease in blood pressure that was sensed by the macula densa cells, which then triggered the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. Renin via blood will then go to the liver and it will convert a protein called angiotensin into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 then comes into blood and then moves to lungs. In the lungs, there is an enzyme called ACE or angiotensin converting enzyme. This enzyme converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. And once we have angiotensin 2, it triggers a lot of things to regulate blood pressure. So once angiotensin 2 is formed by the action of ACE on angiotensin 1, it'll go and target different tissues of the body. Let's talk about it. First, the angiotensin 2 will go to the hypothalamus, and then it'll stimulate the thirst response. So therefore, we will feel more thirsty. Do you agree? We will feel more thirsty. And when we are more thirsty, what do? We drink more water. As we drink more water, our blood volume goes up, and that leads to increased blood pressure. Make sense? All right. Now, next, the angiotensin 2 will go to the supraoptic nucleus of the hypothalamus, and it will cause release of antidiuretic hormone from the pituitary gland. Posterior pituitary, to be precise. Antidiuretic hormone will act on the collecting duct. It'll work on the collecting duct of the kidneys, and this will help to reabsorb water back into the system. As water is reabsorbed back into the system, that increases blood volume, that eventually will increase cardiac output, and that will increase blood pressure. All right. The angiotensin 2 will also work on the adrenal cortex and will cause the adrenal cortex to release the hormone called aldosterone. Aldosterone will work on the distal convoluted tubule, and in return, under the influence of aldosterone, sodium will be reabsorbed from the distal convoluted tubule, sodium reabsorption. And as sodium is reabsorbed back into the system, water follows. So essentially, we are picking up salt water or water and electrolytes from the distal convoluted tubule. This will lead to increased blood volume and increased blood pressure. All right. The angiotensin 2 will also travel via blood, and then it'll work on different blood vessels and cause smooth muscle contraction of the blood vessels. That will lead to vasoconstriction, and as we know, as we have vasoconstriction, that will lead to increased blood flow, and that will lead to increased cardiac output and increased blood pressure. Therefore, class, the angiotensin 2, as we see, works to increase blood pressure. Do you see this? It is increasing blood pressure, increasing blood pressure, increasing blood pressure, increasing blood pressure. It is helping us to increase blood pressure. Therefore, if you think about it, if you have a patient who has hypertension, so of course you need to stop that, right? You don't want his blood pressure to get even higher. We don't want to do that. We want his blood pressure to come back to normal homeostatic range, right? So do you think if you can block angiotensinogen, do you think in that case, if you can block angiotensin 2, that will be helpful? Yes, totally. So in that case, for patients with hypertension, there are ACE inhibitors, meaning these inhibitors inactivate the ACE in the lungs. So remember what's happening in the lungs. You have angiotensin 1, right? That gets converted to angiotensin II in the lungs by the action of ACE. And then this angiotensin II will, work on different things to increase blood pressure. That's the point. But if you inhibit angiotensin II, then of course angiotensin I can no longer be converted into angiotensin II, and then there will be no chance of increased blood pressure. So a lot of blood pressure medications are actually ACE inhibitors, and there are some that I have listed here. These are the common ones that you see in the market. However, you will not be quizzed on memorization of these names. But I do want to understand that for patients with hypertension, a lot of times the medication that they get, they are ACE inhibitors. And I want you to understand how that works, right? So if you inhibit ACE, we do not form angiotensin II in the first place, and that helps to prevent elevated blood pressure. Hope that's clear. All right, class. Now we are done. We are done with the glomerular filtration. We will move on to the second segment of the nephron, which is called the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT. So what did we see here? At this level, we had the glomerular filtration, right? And all the stuff that was filtered out, this was the filtrate, right? This was filtrate. Remember, we discussed that the filtrate has a lot of important stuff. Filtrate contains glucose, filtrate contains sodium, filtrate contains other ions, it contains vitamins, a lot of water. Can we really afford to lose all those things? No. Remember, 80%, I want you to know this, 80% of the blood gets, I should use a different color. 80% of blood gets filtered out from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. And out of these 80%, 20%, sorry, class, just a minute. Okay. Most of it, out of these 80%, about 70% will be reabsorbed. Wrong arrow. 70, do you follow the green arrow? Okay. So 70% will be reabsorbed from this proximal convoluted tubule into the distal into the blood vessel. Okay. So this process by which things from the filtrate move back into the capillary, so the yellow arrows are showing the pathway of movement of molecules from the proximal convoluted tubule back into the capillary. And this process is called selective reabsorption that we will look at now. Okay. Before we go into details, first I want you to notice that the proximal convoluted tubule is lined with simple cuboidal epithelial cells. Simple cuboidal epithelial cells, right? And then thelial cells. And then the materials that are being transported via these simple cuboidal epithelial cells will actually pass the interstitial space. So this is the interstitial space, and then eventually enter the capillary, right? So we will see how things come from the lumen. This is the lumen. How things come from the lumen into across the simple cuboidal epithelial into the interstitial space and ultimately into the capillary. We will start with a new video.